the ceasefire done? Is the MOU dead?
It's a very interesting question. To me, I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. You know what scum is? They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people. And if they had a nuclear weapon, they'd use it. As far as I'm concerned, it's over.
That was President Trump just moments ago in Turkey, saying the ceasefire with Iran is over amid renewed fighting in the region. Good morning. Welcome to Way Too Early. I'm Ali Vitale on this Wednesday, July 8th. And we're going to start with that breaking news overseas because there are growing tensions across the Middle East this morning after the U.S. launched a new round of powerful strikes against Iran. More than 80 sites were targeted, including Iranian air defense systems and radars, in response to Iranian attacks on 3 commercial vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. Central Command released this footage late last night as U.S. officials called the Iranian attacks, quote, unwarranted, dangerous, and a clear violation of the ceasefire agreement. Now, before those strikes took place, the U.S. Treasury Department also reimposed sanctions on Iranian oil. That move caused oil prices to jump yesterday. Overnight, Iran responded by targeting U.S. military sites in both Kuwait and Bahrain. Iranian leaders warned the country would take whatever measures it deems necessary, they said, in retaliation to the new U.S. strikes, raising new fears that the repeatedly violated ceasefire could collapse and reignite a wider regional conflict. I want to go right to the ground in Ankara, Turkey. Pentagon reporter for Politico, Paul McCleary, is there. Paul, the president now saying that the memorandum of understanding is off the table. The ceasefire, to his mind, is over. At another point then, during that brief Q&A, he said they can keep talking, they can keep negotiating. So where do things actually stand?
That's a great question. I mean, this took everyone by surprise. I mean, we figured Trump would come here and complain about Greenland, complain about Spain, things like that, but we didn't really expect him to say the ceasefire was over here. As far as he was concerned, it was over. But the fighting last night and yesterday was more intense than we've seen in the last couple of weeks. Like, there's been attacks back and forth, but for over the last few weeks, but for Iran to hit U.S. military sites and then those large U.S. airstrikes, and the president to say this today, this kind of turns everything on its head and really raises questions about how long this is going to go on and what comes next.
This is basically 30 minutes old since the president said that in his mind the ceasefire is over. But I wonder if you're hearing anything from your Pentagon sources back here in the U.S. and then on the ground in Turkey, how the president's comments have sort of rippled through the NATO gathering.
Yeah, I mean, everyone, as you said, it just happened. So everyone's kind of scrambling to figure out what comes next, what this actually meant, if Trump is doing what he often does and just kind of says things that come to the top of his mind, or if this is a real change in policy. It looks like a change in policy. I mean, this was, I think, a statement that he had thought about, and I don't think it was off the top of his head. And it seems that the United States still has aircraft carriers in the region, all the air wings from when the war started in February. So the United States can ramp it up again and keep it going for weeks or months if that's what it's going to be. And the Iranians have shown that they can take these hits, absorb these hits, and keep firing off missiles and drones. They don't seem to be deterred by the U.S. air power.
What is the thing that you will be looking for, or the person that you will be looking at as we try to figure out, and I think you're right to point it out this way, if it's just the president talking in the public view and saying bombastic things, which frankly he has both online throughout this process and of course in person at various events, whether it's that or if this is a more substantive change in policy, which would effectively mean, to my mind, that the U.S. is now back at war with Iran.
Yeah, I mean, this raises issues even for NATO, right? I mean, Trump has been complaining that NATO didn't help, although the United States launched this war without consulting allies, or as Mark Rutte said, NATO Secretary General, over 5,000 sorties took off from European air bases. So this puts new pressure on the alliance between the U.S. and NATO. But I would look at more flights from the United States of weapons and aircraft. I mean, there's already, as I said, aircraft carriers there. So we have the tools in place now to keep the fighting going, but there's going to need to be resupply of missiles and weapons and things like that. So I would take a look at U.S. air bases and seeing those transport planes come over to the Middle East to resupply and for potential uptick in fighting again.
It's important as we try to figure out what does come next. But let's focus on NATO itself, because you brought up the NATO Secretary General, the ways that he has tried to navigate this tense relationship with Trump at times. But throughout this gathering, really, alliance members have been largely working to showcase how they are stepping up their defense spending, aiming to address a long-held grievance of President Trump. The president, however, is continuing to criticize NATO while on the ground in Turkey, even reviving his threats toward Greenland. Watch.
That's what hurt my relationship with NATO, because Greenland doesn't help Denmark. Denmark doesn't spend money to really help Greenland, but it's an important part for the United States. And it's surrounded by China ships and Russian ships. And that's not going to happen. The ships, it's not going to happen. It was Greenland that, and it continues to be, that should be controlled by the United States, not by Denmark. And when they wouldn't go along with it, and with all the money we spend to help them with Russia, and we don't have to spend any money, we could remove all of our soldiers out of Europe. Because as you probably noticed, Europe's a very different place than it was 20 years ago. A lot different, much different. So much different, and they've got to be careful with immigration and energy. If they're not careful with those two things, you're not going to have a Europe anymore.
And the Danish leader in response has vowed to defend Greenland, saying the Arctic island is, of course, not for sale. So even as Trump is reviving that old Greenland grievance, he's also speaking yesterday about Russia's war in Ukraine, repeating his claim that the conflict does not affect the United States as NATO leaders in Turkey focus on support for Kyiv. Watch that.
Russia-Ukraine. Did Putin seem open to any concessions that he had?
Never changed. I just don't want him killing people. You know, it doesn't affect the United States. When Biden was here, he gave them hundreds of billions of dollars worth of equipment. Now I sell the equipment for, fair price, full price. And I sell it not to Ukraine, I sell it to the European Union. They pay us. But with me, it's not anything to do other than I'd like to save lives. You have 25, 35, 30. One time it hit 41,000 a month souls. They're dead. They leave their mother in Ukraine. They leave their mother and father in Russia, Ukraine. They wave goodbyes. And a week later, they're dead. It's crazy. And I would like to see, it doesn't affect us. It's really, it's far away. It affects Europe much more. We're there to help Europe. But it doesn't affect the United States. We have an ocean in between. But, it's just, I can't stand watching what's happening. And I've seen the battlefields. They send me pictures. I actually want to say, don't send them to me. Pete, this man right here, sends me pictures. Pete Hegseth. And I said, Pete, you know what? It doesn't help to look. I've never seen anything like it. It's carnage. And it should stop.
The president is set to meet this morning with Ukrainian President Zelensky, and Trump will also sit down with Syria's president before holding a press conference and later returning to Washington, D.C. And so, Paul, we're going to hear more from the president several hours from now. We'll end up seeing what we see at that point. But as we focus on the ways that he's talking about Ukraine and basically putting both physical, geographical distance between the conflict and the United States, but then he's also saying it's Europe's problem, except for the fact that the security guarantees of NATO make it all of NATO's problems. And so how are those comments now being received for an alliance that Trump has frankly tested in very real ways over the course of the last year?
Yeah, I think allies here were really ready and waiting for the president to say things just like this. Folks I spoke to before the summit, and then even over the last 2 days, foreign ministers and defense ministers from different NATO countries were waiting for the president to criticize them, criticize spending, complain about their lack of help in Iran. So they're kind of ready for it. And the numbers that Trump is quoting there from the Ukraine war, those are all Russian casualties, the 35 to 40,000 a month. Those are all Russians. And so the numbers are even higher when you include the Ukrainians. But this was a pretty good news summit the first day before the president arrived. Europe had committed to billions more in defense spending. They'd already spent over $200 billion more over the past 2 years or so. But they knew that the things were going to change when the president came. And I would imagine that when he speaks later this afternoon in local time, we're going to hear more on Greenland, more complaints, probably threats of taking it by force or buying it, more complaints over the war in Ukraine and how it's not our problem, which of course it is. European countries are buying American weapons and sending it to Ukraine. So the United States, Trump says we're not involved, we are involved. We're selling weapons to Europeans to give to Ukraine. So we're the arsenal. The United States remains the arsenal of the Ukrainian military in a lot of ways.
And what viewers are seeing, Paul, is the class photo at NATO. The president, of course, standing there next to the NATO Secretary General. I also believe he's standing next to the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. That's who it looked like to my eye. We will, of course, keep our focus there if anything comes of it from an editorial perspective. But just watching the body language of these European leaders as they expected what you were talking about, Paul, which is basically a tough road with the president likely lashing out on any number of subjects and watching that then bear out. Of course, the way that Mark Rutte has dealt with the president, he has very much chosen the praise approach to try to placate the president anytime there's complexities in the relationship. I mean, they had a full-on policy debate about everything from Greenland to Iran in full view of the cameras like 45 minutes ago. So how has that approach actually borne out on the ground?
Allies understand what Rutte's doing and what he's trying to do, but they also think maybe he's taking it a little bit too far at times, right? I mean, yesterday he did an interview with Politico, and Rutte basically said Trump was right about everything. Everything from Iran and from Ukraine, all his policies are correct. And so that rankles the alliance a little bit. People are really loath to say it out loud with their name attached, but they don't like that he's kind of going all in and just kind of saying yes to everything that the president wants. But Rutte's point, I think, here would be that he kind of has to do this. The alliance needs the United States. He has to try to keep the president happy. And I think they're kind of just gaming out for the next several years of this administration to try to get to the end and see where they are in the next 2 years.
We will see where we are in the next few hours, let alone the next few years. Pentagon reporter at Politico, Paul McCleary, thank you so much for joining us.